I'm Kaya Allo, and welcome to Ink and Spine, a space between words and sound, where each week we sit together with a book, a film, an album to connect, savoring each slowly at the sweet pace of honey. Today, we complete the second half of our reflection on the book Start With Yourself by Emma Grede. Thank you for joining me in episode 1. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it'll be linked for you to follow in order or in reverse, whatever floats your boat. The first half of the book, which we covered in part 1 in episode 1, was an invitation to reframe our relationship with mindset, with fear, with boundaries, and the ways that we harness our emotions as allies instead of enemies. Today, we finish our reflection of the book focused on the practical implementation of starting with ourselves. Again, this isn't a self-help or toxic positivity anything. I hope that you will enjoy this episode while walking, having a bath, doing something grounded and relaxing, as this is an offering of sweetness and reminders. Emma Grede says it plainly. You can't build anything if you do not start, even if it is starting small, especially if the starting is small. So, let's begin sweetness. In our featured Sweetness, Start With Yourself, on page 159, Emma writes, "You can't build shit if you don't start. Just start, even if it's teeny tiny. Too rarely do people think, I'm going to start with something small and test it. I'm going to start exactly where I am and learn everything I can by tending to the garden I can reach." Spring reminds me of the power of our small beginnings. I have a brown thumb, but my friends have generously allowed me to try my hand at growing carrots in their garden. I've never planted anything, so my respect for gardeners has increased exponentially with this experiment. The carrot seeds are so tiny, like they were disappearing between my fingers as we were planting. But as we sprinkled these tiny seeds into the soil, I envisioned them as little prayers. I'm in awe at what is already sprouted in these few weeks. There has been wind, there has been hail, and rain, and opportunistic wildlife to test these seeds before they can even break ground. But suddenly, little sprouts have appeared, breaking through heavy earth to reach sunlight and air. What has struck me beyond this growing marvel has been the instruction to water once a day and leave the seeds to be. It's been humbling to reflect on the ways in which I've been an overbearing gardener in my life, huddled over my seeds like a helicopter parent. I've desired stability and safety since I was a little girl, and that desire has turned to this death grip, so tight as I have worked and pushed and strived for safety and peace and stability. I have been unable, I think, at times to be open to allowing my seeds to grow in their purposeful direction beyond my control. But it seems that in this new phase of building anew, I'm invited to trust beyond my ability, to open myself up to growth in the unexpected. Now that's easier said and done, as I feel like I'm free falling right now. But the daily observation of these tiny and mighty seeds, that has been a welcomed and sweet reminder to breathe and trust. I wonder for you if that resonates with your future or present plans, your hopes for now and later. For you, is there room for once the doing is done, to be able to house grateful openness for possibility beyond the effort of your hands. On page 77, Emma writes, "It's a lot easier to shift the culture when you're not worried about feeding yourself or paying your bills. Start with yourself. Money talks, often louder than everything else in the room. Women are great at making money, often for other people. We need to be better at taking money for ourselves." And a little bit earlier, there's a line that she repeats twice on page 76 and even earlier in the introduction, and I don't think that's by mistake. She writes, "While it's true that money can't solve all your problems, money sure will solve all your money problems." Emma's acknowledgement of her unique privilege is refreshing. She acknowledges that the networks she didn't build but did inherit. She acknowledges the privilege of her marriage to someone who had already been successful and willing to bolster her talent and believe in it. She also names her privilege on the page. She doesn't use it as a hiding place, but to bear her privilege right out for us. The book is not pretending to be some kind of universal manual, but it is a possible and helpful framework if it so serves whoever is reading. But the borrowing for me is the point, and that's where I find resonance. This isn't a self-help podcast because, honey, I can't offer nobody no help right now. But I can offer my learnings and my mistakes. This is rather an invitation into your own reflection to find nuggets of sweetness for yourself. And hopefully, you'll share them as we are cultivating community together. But returning back to the discussion of money, it's been interesting to observe Emma's guests on her podcast, all the way from Cardi B to Melody Hobson, and their varying reactions when Emma asks her point-blank bullseye questions about money. It's fascinating because money is such an important part of how we live life, how we operate. For such an important facet of life, it's veiled from open discussion in these interesting ways. Now, don't get me wrong. Money isn't everything, but in a circumstance like poverty, money is a trajectory redirector. Now, I'm grateful for the ways that technology has made it so much easier to access financial literacy, resources, and education and discussions about money. I'm learning the ways to make money a useful servant because it is a terrible master. This week, while preparing final edits for this episode, Emma put her money where her mouth is, literally, to contribute her power and weight to a discussion surrounding ownership and credit when it comes to artists of color, specifically in the makeup world. Like, who knew blush could be the catalyst for such an important conversation? But I'll link the episode of Emma interviewing Patrick Ta in the show notes for you to get caught up in case you're not into the world of blush right now. But the interview between Emma Grede and Patrick Ta is a case study in productive accountability. She really means what she says in the book about money being the loudest in a room and providing leverage and power. During Emma's interview with Patrick, she asked direct questions. She came with research. She spoke clearly about the necessity to credit artists, specifically like Painted by Esther, and to make space for Patrick to also share his version of events. Yes, her grace was necessary, and I did appreciate her going high in how she extended compassion and respect to Patrick. But there is a privilege that comes with protection. And I think that we need more Emmas to give us examples of how to advocate for ourselves when that privilege of protection isn't available. Instead of accepting the typical rhetoric to be a bigger person and quietly withstand, How about just being a person? The bigger is indicative of compensating for a void in personhood that usually isn't ours to fill or repair in the first place. I find it apt to close the review of this book with Emma's embodiment of the philosophy that she shares throughout Start With Yourself. Now, advocacy looks different for all of us, based on our locations, the times of culture, but I wonder if we can borrow from this example. And in the words of Epictetus, rather than explaining our philosophies to each other, just living it. It appears that the era of performance and empty virtue signaling is becoming obsolete. And I hope that that era goes away to make space for what is real, what is true, what is actual allyship and advocacy for each other, because that is the essence of community. I invite you to listen or to read, Start With Yourself, to make space for your own sweetness and reflections. But I conclude our reflection of the book with one of Emma's basic rules on the very last page, page 275, rule number 14. I refuse to be afraid of anyone. Period. This week's segment, You're Welcome, Sweetness, features an important topic. The practical offering is intended to bring sweetness to an experience that so many are facing right now. Brené Brown has a helpful saying, which is, shame is the illusion that we are alone in an experience. And my intention with talking about poverty today is to bring sweetness to that discussion, to remove that false veil that shame brings and isolates those who are in need. Now, when I speak of poverty, I don't use the term casually. I refer to the term poverty in its statistical connotation. Where I live in Canada, the poverty line is officially measured using what is called the Market Basket Measure, MBM. So rather than looking at just gross income, it looks at a household's disposable income, what people actually have available after taxes and certain unavoidable expenses. And it compares that to the cost of what has been deemed a modest and dignified standard of living in certain communities. In Alberta, the poverty line for a single adult is roughly $25,000 to $28,000 a year, depending on location in the province. And this is based on 2024 data from Statistics Canada. So someone can be working full-time and still be below the poverty line. Poverty is about whether your income can cover your basic needs, not whether one has a job. I believe that we gon' make it out. I've learned in this recent experience of mine that poverty is not as simple as a mantra or a song, but I offer something practical with the hope of bringing about relief, even if it's just a little bit. So we begin with my first practical offering, which is creating a system to try to stay on top of all of the doors that one has to knock on. And for me, as I evolve from beneath our province's poverty threshold, having systems has been a saving grace. I also want to caveat this offering with the understanding that not all have access to a mobile device, and having a mobile device is truly a privilege. But this can be applied to any device that you have access to, even if it's just a pen and paper. I'll talk about access to the library later and how to get there, but that has been a wonderful place of support, a wealth of wisdom, and I can't thank library staff enough for their dignified responses, their compassion, and their patience. Now, a simple system to keep track of things like links, to, phone numbers, new contacts, job postings, that can be helpful when waking up to the day and you're looking at the daunting task of overcoming poverty or whatever difficult challenge you might be in. It doesn't have to be economic challenge. But my grandmother used to say, an elephant can be eaten whole, just one small bite at a time. So please make this your own based on your devices and needs and what is accessible to you and acceptable, I guess. But for this offering, I'm going to use Apple Reminders as an example for systems. I found it useful to go into my Apple Reminders and label 7 reminder lists for each day of the week. Now, I love emojis, so the way I've set up my reminders is by putting an emoji that signifies sweetness so that I can have sweet reminders amidst the heaviness of each day's tasks. The thing that I like about Apple Reminders is the ability to add links to that reminder. You can add a photo. For example, I added a map so that I could use that for an upcoming job interview. And you can also add a timeline so that at a specific date and time, you are prompted so you don't have to worry about remembering one more thing. This has been handy as well as I've been applying for grants to keep track of deadlines for feedback or for grant submission due dates. Additionally, if you're working on a joint project with someone, I love the ability to share a reminder list, to assign tasks to either yourself or the other person, along with a date prompt and a time notification, so you don't have to worry about being a bother or multiple follow-ups. You can rather save your energy for the greater tasks at hand. I'll be posting a mini little video on how I set up my Apple Reminders, and that'll be available on Sunday with the Substack newsletter drop, so I hope you will subscribe. But the whole point of this is that systems don't need to be complicated or require you spending additional funds beyond what you have on fancy apps. But if you do want separate apps, I would recommend 2. And one of them is Todoist, and the other one is Things. You can create systems with what you have, truly by starting with yourself. And I hope that's been really helpful to share. So whether that be as simple as a pen and paper, whatever it may be, you're starting with yourself. I'm a nerd for functional life systems, so if you have any questions, please comment or DM, and I would be happy to share what I've learned so far and also to learn from you. I love learning from others, and I am really excited about the opportunity to learn together. If you live in Alberta, a game-changing program has been the Fair Entry program in Calgary. And for Edmonton, it's called the Leisure Access Program and also the Ride Transit Program. In Alberta, folks living on limited incomes can access subsidized transit and recreation programs. These initiatives help to reduce the cost of monthly transit passes, and they provide discounted or even free access to recreation centers, pools, fitness facilities, classes, and community programs. I speak from grateful experience as to how impactful and powerful these programs have been in my journey as I overcome the mountain that is poverty. The goal with these programs is to make transportation, physical activity, and community participation even more accessible. Now, I'll make sure I include links to the programs in the show notes in the description box on YouTube of the episode, as well as in Sunday's Substack newsletter. But I can't thank this city and this province enough for this helpful program. I could not afford a regular priced transit pass, and it was really daunting for me to try to navigate getting around and trying to garner more opportunities. So I hope that this offering is helpful for you in wherever you are in your journey. Maybe you do have a job and you're struggling with how to even afford a transit pass. And based off of your income, the programs are great in determining your bands. That's how they decide how much of a subsidy one will receive. So I encourage you to check out those programs, and I'll be sure to include links. And for anyone that is in areas outside of these programs, I'll also include a helpful link to what is called the Benefits Wayfinder. Now, this link was transformative for me because it provided information and services beyond what was available maybe on a provincial level, as it includes programs all the way from your municipal level to your provincial level, all the way up to the federal level. So I'll be sure to also include the Benefits Wayfinder. We can still maintain our dignity in spite of poverty. We are enabled with systems to keep our minds and our bodies fortified, and to maintain the tether intact to the world beyond that which we know and we see. Though these offerings today are practical, I do acknowledge that they do not solve all challenges that we face. But my only hope is that this is a helpful resource for you or for someone that you know to take even the smallest step forward. I'm rooting for you, sweetness. As Beyoncé says in her song, Just for Fun, I came here for a reason, but I don't know the purpose. It's all under the surface. I still can't rationalize the brutality of this experience or those in my life thus far, but I do hope that in sharing these practical resources that I'm discovering a part of my unfolding purpose. There has to be a reason or something good that can come of these horrors. So in journeying toward a future land of honey that I believe is out there, as long as I remain on course and stay close to the light, I wish the very same for you, sweetness. Moving forward to our next segment, which is Sweet Reminders, where I feature stories of inspiration and human tenacity beyond the world I know. Today's Sweetness features two special people. First, Rachel Enterkin, and none other than Barack Obama. First with Rachel. Rachel is a trail runner from the States, and this spring she won the Cocodona 250, an insane race. It's 253 miles across the Arizona desert. And not only did she win this year's Cocodona 250, but when asked what kept her going as she broke a record, I think it was an hour 37 minutes till the next. She had taken dirt naps, survived the heat and the cold. She shared that her mantra was so simple. Why not me? Simple as that. So why not you, sweetness? Why not you? Why not me? Why not us? I'm going to include a link to a creator named Coach Jackie, whose video on Rachel's historic feat made me cry. And for one tiny minute, I did consider getting into trail running. That only lasted a small minute. But I am grateful for the inspiration and the sweet reminders from Rachel Enterkin's incredible feat. Moving on to our second sweet reminder feature this week, and that is Barack Obama. And I believe on the 18th, his presidential center will be officially open to the public. And I thought, how fitting, because I found something really special in the depths of my little memory box with a few treasures. And that is this newspaper clipping from 2008 when he won his first presidential election. And I remember this so clearly. I walked to the corner store, I remember on the morning before school, and I made sure to get a physical paper copy of the newspaper because I wanted to remember that moment forever. So I hope that this doesn't tarnish, but I have it kept in tissue paper. But I share this newspaper clipping because I remember going to sleep on the night of Barack Obama's historic win in 2008, bottling up a visual representation of what the audacity of hope could actually manifest. Within the space of one school term, my grades saw a significant spike. That was because he helped me believe and eclipse the hopelessness that had taken root within me when it seemed like relief from the brutality of my lived experience was inescapable. So this week, between the Knicks parade and the infusion of hope from the opening of the Obama Presidential Center, I do hope that these reminders of sweetness are as nourishing for you as they are for me. And I hope that putting them on the internet in this format makes it easy for you to access in times where you might need a top-up of honey, a top-up of sweet reminders that goodness still exists, that the impossible is possible. Y'all all right? We move on to the segment Slow Listen, and I hope that you've been enjoying the Ink and Spine playlist on Spotify. It's been such an enjoyable labor of love to bring together songs of significance to pair with all of our features in this podcast. As an artist, music holds hands with everything. The pairing of Just for Fun by Beyonce and Willie Nelson, along with Emma's book, Start With Yourself, that felt like sweet alignment. In the song, we hear the legendary Willie Nelson's raspy voice, and Beyonce joins alongside Willie as she sings, I came here for a reason, and still I don't know the purpose. It's all under the surface. Isn't that all of us? Awake to our existence and being for a reason, but the work of a lifetime in discovering our existence' actual purpose. Now, if you have songs on your playlists that resonate with the books and the topics that we've reflected on and will reflect on, I would love to add them to the playlist. So please drop a comment with your songs of sweetness. Before we continue with our last segment, I want to say thank you for tuning in. I hope that you'll continue to stick around for future episodes. I hope you'll like, share, comment, do all the bits, share it with someone you like, someone you kind of like. But it means a lot to just continue to cultivate community beyond the world we know. I want to give you a little preview of what's to come. And in episode 3, we're going to take a little pivot towards films. We are going to be watching and savoring the film Mississippi Masala, starring Denzel Washington together. I am excited to explore that film. In episode 4 and 5, we will return back to books and we will be savoring the iconic memoir, Dreams from My Father, by Barack Obama. I read that book many years ago as a youngin'. I think returning to it as an adult has such unique and sweet resonance that I wanted to share with y'all as I read it at a time where I needed to be reminded of hope and the audacity to dream again. If you have any recommendations for films, for books, or for albums that you want featured or that you'd want to savor together, I encourage you to drop a comment anywhere this podcast is posted or to send me a DM, and I would be so grateful to include your infusion of sweetness and inspiration. I can't believe our time together is almost coming to a close, but thankfully we can do this next week again. In the final segment called Carry Forward, as this episode draws to a close, I hope you've enjoyed today's reflections and found your own sweetness to carry forward. When we remember the small and miraculous might of the mustard seed and the carrot seed, they need not wish to be anything but themselves or wish to be the mountain. It is necessary that they only believe in themselves as living things. As you reflect with a little more reverence, a little more gratitude, and a little more sweetness for the miracle that you are, can your aperture of vision be expanded to house more possibility beyond that which comes from your hands? Thank you for spending time with me today. Please like, rate, subscribe, and share this episode. Spread a little honey and sweetness. See you soon, sweetness.